Welcome back, guys. In the last 24 hours, we've actually just had our first little pullback here for the altcoin market, which on some coins that have been performing better, like XRP, this was a bit more of a steeper pullback, actually seeing price at the lows drop nearly 17% from the previous highs set back on the 19th. But in today's video, we're going to cover exactly why all of this is normal, how all of this actually played out back in 2021 here for the Bitcoin dominance, and that what we're actually seeing here today is the first of many more pullbacks to come on the journey up here for the altcoin market, and that it is completely normal for some of the coins that have been performing the strongest to see some of the steepest corrections in a pullback like this. So if this pullback's leaving you feeling a little bit unsettled after weeks of seeing your portfolio slowly go up and up in price, don't worry, today we're going to jump in, cover everything, have a look at why this is completely normal and what to expect moving forward. So let's jump into it, guys. So the first thing I actually want to touch on here is the Bitcoin dominance. And what we can see is that after breaking down through these lows here, the Bitcoin dominance has actually spiked back to the upside, finding rejection at this previous support level. And what we have drawn here is actually the way price reacted back in 2021 for the Bitcoin dominance. And what you can see is that it's taken 24 days from the peak of the dominance to this low set back here on Monday. And what's interesting about this is if we actually have a look back to 2021, what you'll see is that from the peak of the Bitcoin dominance, when price dropped back down through this same blue line, which is interesting because we're seeing the dominance break down from the same levels and actually find support and resistance in the same levels as it did back in 2021 here, you'll see that it actually took 32 days for the top of this move and the bottom of this move to come in. In comparison to what we've seen today, it's only taken 24 days from the top to the bottom. So things are playing out a little bit faster here today, but what's actually most interesting to me is that once this low came in and you did see the Bitcoin dominance actually spike back up, drop back down and start to actually contract here and break to the downside, it took a total of 53 days from this low until we actually seen a daily candle close below this support level. And that if the Bitcoin dominance on today's price chart is to play out like it did in 2021 here, that would take us between roughly, if we're using the same shortened estimates here, roughly 40 to 50 days of sideways actions for the dominance, which takes us to about the end of August. And if we have a look at this fractal here, which is actually pulled from current Bitcoin dominance, and we overlay it over the way things played out in 2021, you can see these things are scarily similar in the way that they rejected at the same levels, pumped back up, and now finding support at the same levels and actually acting quite similar to the way things played out. However, what I wanted to jump into today isn't so much the Bitcoin dominance, but how certain coins and price charts reacted during this time where the dominance actually chilled out for like 50 days. So we're going to start here on the total market cap excluding Bitcoin. Now if we flick this over to the daily time frame, zoom out and actually have a look back to 2021, what you'll see is that these two arrows I have marked out here are from the 5th of February to the 30th of March of 2021, which is this exact period where the Bitcoin dominance chilled out. You can see this is the end of March of 21, and this is that February 5th date where we actually seen the dominance bottom and consolidate in this zone. And if you have a look on the total 2 here, which is the total market cap excluding Bitcoin, you'll see during this time the total market cap actually moved to the upside. So even with the Bitcoin dominance chilling out and going sideways, altcoins still continued to rally. And what we're going to have a look at now is the select altcoins that actually rallied and how coins actually performed in this move. However, before we have a look at that, what's worth mentioning here is yes, we did see price of altcoins on average continue to climb up higher during this period, but what came next after this period was a very explosive run here for the altcoin market, and that was when we seen the Bitcoin dominance actually break down and give us the end of our alt season back in 2021. So the first coin I actually want to start with is Litecoin, because we have drawn reference to XRP's price from the way Litecoin reacted, and it was a pretty big coin back in 2021. You can see how aggressively it actually rallied at the start of this alt season, which we're seeing a lot of comparisons between XRP and this. So we'll start by having a look at Litecoin here, and you can see that on the 5th or 6th of February around this time, when we actually seen the dominance chill out and bottom, Litecoin still did shoot to the upside, pull back a little bit, consolidate, and then eventually once the dominance started to break down on that 30th of March area, we did see Litecoin shoot to the upside quite aggressively, and this was the bull run for Litecoin back in 2021. Now if we jump over to another big coin from 2021, Ethereum here, you'll see that somewhat similar price structure actually played out from the 5th of February here. You've seen ETH's price shoot up, shot down a lot deeper than Litecoin, actually sweeping those lows back on that 5th of February. But then eventually it did continue to consolidate and grind to the upside. So actually underperforming against Litecoin. However, come the end of this consolidation period, you've seen ETH shoot up and then go for that final expansion in its bull run. And just one final coin I will touch on here is actually Dogecoin. And you can see from that same period on that 5th of February right here, you can see Dogecoin actually performed quite similar, where price did shoot up, consolidate for a time, and then go for that final expansion, which was quite parabolic. Now, these three examples are from large cap coins and smaller cap coins, and you can see that they all reacted quite similar during this period, which was when the Bitcoin dominance actually chilled out after seeing the initial break. And what that leaves me thinking here on if things are going to play out like 2021 is that now that the altcoin market, excluding Bitcoin here, has broken back through its final retracement, it is likely that it does battle this final retracement level for a small period of time before then breaking to the upside and potentially acting like the way Dogecoin did, like the way Ethereum did, and the way that Litecoin did back in 2021, where once this was over, we did see price shoot to the upside for a lot of these coins. So I think it's quite likely that the total market cap actually just grinds to the upside here. And a very good example of this actually playing out was if, for viewers of the channel, actually Bitcoin's price chart over those last 2 months when we did that ABC correction, what you'll see is that during that ABC correction, once Bitcoin got back to that 786 Fibonacci retracement level, which is this top line here, what you'll see is that during that time, Bitcoin's price broke above it, broke back down below it. We basically consolidated in this region before it was time to go and break out. And I think that the altcoin market here, excluding Bitcoin, is most likely going to act similar, and that if the Bitcoin dominance is to act like 2021 and pull something like this, is that the altcoin market here will most likely just consolidate in these zones before breaking to the upside. Now, if we tie this into XRP, what you'll see is that we have this fractal here that we grabbed from November of last year, and we said that its likely price was most likely at a stalled out point here and that we should start to see it move to the upside. However, we didn't see any pullbacks deep like we've seen in November of last year. Well, now we have seen a deep pullback, and it is pretty much the exact same size as the way things actually played out back in November, which, for those who weren't around here, that correction was back down in these depths here, which doesn't look like much, but during this time, this was also a 13% correction. And so far, what we've seen on XRP is roughly a 16% correction. And although this looks much worse, it is still a relatively similar size correction, being nearly 17%. So moving forward, if we tie this into the altcoin market, consolidating here for a while, the Bitcoin dominance continuing to act like it did back in 2021, I think it's likely that we do actually see this fractal play out quite similar for XRP. So guys, even on lower time frames here, if we have a look at coins like XLM, for example, they're still performing quite nicely, and this pullback isn't really anything to be scared about. As you can see, price has pushed up over 120% in the last week or two, and now to see some kind of pullback, even if it is a 20% correction, is really nothing to be too scared about, as these things do happen a lot of the time as price moves up. And even if we have a look at XRP's run up that happened back in November, you can see that these corrections look small now, but when you go in and have a look at them, even this first one that we're drawing reference to, this right here was the 13% correction. The next correction we had for XRP was a 20% correction, which was then followed by another 20% correction, which was then followed by the final move in the XRP price chart before topping and actually putting in another 20% correction. So what we're seeing play out here isn't anything unusual, and this is just the way price moves up. It's not going to, things aren't just going to go up forever, and we're not going to see green days every day. There are going to be periods of pulling back. However, like stated in earlier videos, I do think that the stock market really tells the story here, continuing to see it grind to the upside, even seeing the Nasdaq continue to grind to the upside, even the Dow Jones here almost nearly setting a new all-time high, all while at the same time continuing to see weakness in the dollar, which is the perfect macro conditions you want to see for continuation in a Bitcoin and altcoin cycle. And that even if prices are to dip a little bit lower here, I think over the course of the next month or two, we will see things much higher, and that something like this really isn't anything to stress about. And to think that during all of that, Bitcoin only dropped 2.4%, and we're actually starting to see it rally now. I do think that this is the move that we're in, and the next stage in the cycle is to see another breakdown for the Bitcoin dominance, and at the same time go and see the altcoin market actually rally, set new highs just like it did back in 2021. However, we are just battling these final retracement levels, and like seen when battling these final levels, like here on Bitcoin, it can be a little bit of chop, it can be a little bit of sideways, but eventually it does break out from this zone, and it happens quite aggressively, which I think is the next move for the altcoin market once it's done what it needs to do at these levels. And I think what happens to the altcoin market during that time is like XRP from 2021, where we've seen price rally nearly another 300% from current levels. Similar to Ethereum at this exact same time, rallying 160% from current levels. Or even on the more optimistic side of the market, actually seeing coins like Dogecoin back in 2021 rallying over 1,000% in this final stage of the market. So this is what I think's next to come. However, we are at that first point now where I do think things just calm down for a little bit. I still think we're going to see some coins perform quite well in this period here and show strength, especially those coins like touched on in earlier videos that have strong accumulation structures, which are now finding support still on those regions, like Chainlink here, for example, or even Solana finding support in those same regions. And that ultimately what we've seen play out today should be more of an emotion that you keep in the back of your mind for when prices continue to go higher and you're thinking about selling, or you're thinking that if price is going to go higher. Remember back to days like today when things do drop 20% and you're wishing you had have taken more profits higher, that when that time comes and you start to see prices like XRP in those $8, $9, $10, and that during the later stages of the cycle, when we do actually see things really explode from here, that you remember that days like today can actually happen, and that price drops like this never feel good, even after seeing your portfolio go up for days and weeks on end. So I'll keep you guys updated on how this continues to play out, as I do believe that any pullback or dips during a bull market and an expansion phase like this are for buying, and that they happen really fast and really quick, and that if you don't take advantage on certain days like we're seeing today, that eventually you'll just get left behind and see price shoot to the upside, just like in our fractal here on the left hand side. So if you're new here, feel free to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed the content. If you have any questions, drop them down below in the comments section, and I'll see you guys back in the next video. I hope you're having a good week.